Yeah, good morning. I'm feeling I'm feeling really grateful for all of your practice and a little touched by some of the conversations that y'all shared with me earlier this morning. So I'm noticing I'm feeling some just feeling my heart about that. So thank you. Thank you all so much for your practice. Um, let's see. Here's my glasses. Um, so I'm going to share a little bit about a koan, but I'm going to kind of go on a bit of a journey and come back to it. So the koan is case 86 from the Blue Cliff record, and it's short but really concise. So the title of the case is Unman's Bright Light. Unman gave instructions saying, everyone has his own light. If you want to see it, you can't. The darkness is dark, dark. Now, what is your light? And he himself answered, the storeroom, the gate. And then he also said, it would be better to have nothing than to have something good. Mm-hmm. Before I forget, I want to just say that I listened to a couple of other people's talks about this case earlier in the week. And if you just Google Blue Cliff Record Case 86, a talk by Norman Fisher will come up. And he's a Zen teacher in the Suzuki Roshi lineage, and had transmission from the abbot of Berkeley Zen Center, but they're all in Suzuki Roshi's lineage. And it was a fabulous talk. Um, it was the end of a session in 2019. So I think maybe the circumstances and also that it was the end of a session, but I highly recommend listening to it. So I just didn't want to forget to mention that to you. So I was thinking about the dark and light because we're approaching the winter solstice. And yesterday, one of my closest friends and I, we periodically co-lead a mindfulness and yoga event, and we did that yesterday. And our focus was we were doing it a bit early for the solstice, just from a scheduling perspective. Um, and so we always sort of talk about our theme and stuff. And I was curious to focus on the darkness more than the light, because I feel like we're always attracted to the light. I want to feel the light. I want to be the light. And a little bit more uh, hesitant about the darkness. Some of us are anyway. Um, and what was so interesting. So my friend that I was co-leading this with, she'll ask me, what do you think the theme should be? And I was away, and so I said, well, let's look at the shadow. And so she said, okay, well, I'll do some research, because that concept was unfamiliar to her, from a Jungian psychological perspective. And um, she did some research. I actually did some research. But the bottom line seems to me, and anybody who's a clinical psychologist, I'm sure, knows a whole bunch more about this than I do. Um, but it really kind of seemed to come down to, it's what's unconscious to us. It's what we don't see. It's I guess from a analytical perspective, it's things that are repressed, um, memories, but also the disenfranchised parts of ourselves. Um, and what was just striking me so much from a practice perspective is, we have the box. I have the box of Kyoshin and the things that I like to see as part of that box, and the things I don't see that are included in my personality and my conditioning. Um, and when when those things are pointed up to us, out to us, um, how defensive we can get as well, because we're really trying to defend this idea we have of who we are. Um, so anyway, we talked about that some at the event yesterday, and we invited people to then go write, what would come up for them, and and then we shared about it here, and we did a little fire ceremony where we put what we had written into the fire, and um, what was so interesting was there were a number of people who said, I really identify with being upbeat and positive. And I I don't see, I don't I don't relate with shadow. And as they had written about it and taught, that was initially when we talked about it in the Zendo. And then after they had written about it, people were like, oh, I essentially, a number of people said, oh, I see, I'm so attached to being a person who's positive and upbeat that I have a hard time allowing when I feel angry, when I feel my boundaries have been violated. Um, and one person said, and this is like so important, one person said, I realize that it makes me not, it limits how much I'm relating to somebody else who isn't feeling the way I'm feeling. So my attachment to being an upbeat, positive person limits my capacity to even hear, much less have compassion for somebody else whose experience is different than mine. So that was fabulous, and the whole conversation was fabulous around just talking about the shadow, and also seeing people open up to more what the value of looking at what the darkness is. Now, I also listened to another person's talk, and that's Melissa Blackner, and she's a Roshi in Massachusetts. And I'm actually, I don't think I looked into exactly what her lineage is. But the way she talked about this koan, and somewhat, what I got from Norman Fisher's talk too, was actually so liberating in not trying to talk about it from like a classical perspective, but really from this, how does the darkness and light play out in our lives? And ultimately, you know, Linman saying everyone has his own light. I don't know. That's a little possessive. Everyone is light. Everyone is nothing but light from the Buddha Dharma perspective. But when we're looking for it, we can't see it because we're in some kind of identity. We're separate, right? And the darkness is dark, dark. What we don't see is dark. We can't see it. When you're shut off all the lights and have it be nighttime, it's dark. We don't see things when it's dark. I might have shared about this before, but I remember when I was working on this koan with Tenshin Roshi, and I just remember being at work and getting really scared. And I called him, and he said, well, come up if you want, come up to the center if you want. And I just sat, and the one thing he said to me that was so comforting, he's like, I'm there with you. I'm with you. And that's what we are. That's how we are for one another. That's Sangha. When we're in the darkness of what we're not seeing clearly, and the ways in which we're denying how we might be hurting other people with our unconsciousness. That's also how we help each other in Sangha. So Norman Fisher had some nice things to say about this. He said, maybe the whole point of our practice is to know this light is there, to know we are this light, to know we are this great mystery of life, not as a separate thing from us, but as fundamentally inexplicably who we are. And then he said, when we know this light, whatever happens, we can trust our light. We can trust what happens to us. So I wrote down a bunch of other stuff that he said and the other teacher said. And Unman saying he's gonna help us out. He's gonna answer it himself. He answered the storeroom, the gate. So, even at like because I lived at Zen Mountain Center, and even at Zen Mountain Center, there is a storeroom. There is a underneath the dining room. There's where all the excess, non-perishable stuff is kept, and there is a gate at the parking lot. But this doesn't mean the storeroom and the gate of the monastery. It means our living rooms, our bathrooms, our cars, our ordinary life. That when we look, what is your life? Where do you live? Where are we manifesting this unknownness that we are? Is always in the center of our lives. Always. It can't be any other way than that. And we look really hard to try to find it someplace else. I think I talked about that last time. And we have this beautiful longing to understand and to come home. It's a really beautiful thing. It's actually, I think, something to kind of treasure about our heart that way. And like Dogen, I think I shared this earlier this morning, like Dogen Zenji said, why go off wandering in dusty foreign lands to find out what we already are and have? So he's in a monastic setting. So he's saying the storeroom, the gate, my zabuton that I sleep on. And then he goes on further to say, it would be better to have nothing than to have something good. So, that I think that's pretty obvious as far as it's better to hold on no one. And then we're then we're free. Because all our ideas about the thing that we think would be good, of course, it's all transient. And it's just an idea, and it's never the same as when it actually happens. But the I don't know, like a guidance to say it's better to have nothing than to have something good. It's better to be totally open. It's better to have let go as much as possible of all these ideas that we have of ourselves and what we aren't mostly, and what we are. I am. I'm dealing with a situation in my life where I have been in relationship to someone who has a very, very strong idea of who they are, and they don't have our practice, and so when that it isn't even a matter of challenging that person on their idea of themselves. It's just that it's so sad that it creates this context in which you either fit in with that or you don't, because that is unquestioned for this person, what their set ideas of themselves is. At least it appears that way at this moment in time. And that's totally okay. They don't need to be doing what we're doing. However, it is a limiting factor in developing more of a friendship with that person. For me, anyway. Because it's either you fit in my set or I don't kind of don't know how to, I don't, you're too challenging of my ideas and myself. And to be honest, that's sad to me. Because it looks a little claustrophobic. But that's our choice. They don't have to be doing what I'm doing. And I'm certainly not doing what I'm doing perfectly by any stretch of the imagination. But we do have a practice of having an intention to relieve suffering for ourselves and others. And to be free of the confines of our egoic preoccupations. And so, I think it's probably not a traditional view of this koan, but in some ways, the darkness and the light could be looked at the absolute and relative. That really being willing to be in the dark, really being willing to admit what we don't know, especially about ourselves, and be open. One of the when Kate was doing the research for our workshop, seemed a little too intense to do in that context. But there's a clinician who her recommendation with working with the shadow was to envision someone that you've been having a hard time with, or somebody who's been having a hard time with you, and really put yourself, it's like a koan, put yourself in the position of that person and what they might be feeling and seeing. And open up to how you might be defending against perceptions they have of me that I might not like, but that are actually accurate. And I had that experience in this friendship as well, where this person felt disrespected by me at a moment in time. And my little box of Valvalez was, I'm not disrespectful to people. And I was, in fact, disrespectful in something that I did. And it was very uncomfortable to me that it was pointed out. But now that's not in the dark. And this was from another teacher on this koan. An idea of light, it won't appear. It's separated self, looking for something, mind chasing itself. Light appears on its own when you become rather than pursue a unified presence. And Unman is cautioning. I mean, when he's saying, if you look for it, you can't find it, he's cautioning us against seeking outside in that way. Connect body, breath, and mind, and you'll connect with yourself naturally. Anyway, feel a bit scattered, so I apologize. Hope that wasn't all over the place too much. It's really an interesting time of year right now. The light is so low on the horizon. I was on a hike back behind my house yesterday. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it felt like 5. So we're as sort of sentient beings, we're very aware of kind of this time we're still going towards the darkest day. And it hasn't shifted back yet. So it's an opportunity to be with ourselves and investigate what Unman's pointing to. So I'm going to stop there and see what you might have to say.